Coming up on today's episode of DLLS Mavs, Marc Stein live in studio, and what really happened between the Mavericks, Mark Cuban, and Jalen Brunson. All that and more on today's episode of DLLS Mavs. Here we go. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks insider Tim Cato, Mavericks analyst Bobby Carella, and National and Mavericks NBA insider. You can find him on X at The Steinline. Marc Stein joining us live in studio. You can find me on X at Kevin Gray Sports, Tim at Tim_Cato, Bobby at Bobby Carella. So much to get to on today's episode, including what really happened between Jalen Brunson and the Mavericks. Mark Cuban and Jalen Brunson sitting down talking about it. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. But today, gentlemen, it is the in-studio debut of our guy, the Steinline. Marc Stein joining us here in the DLLS headquarters here in downtown Dallas. Mark, what's going on?
It is beautiful. I've been, it's just weird how the timing worked. We didn't know exactly when this beautiful building, when the doors were going to be flung open. We didn't exactly know when the first show would be. So of course, when you guys started and had to carry me last week, I was in faraway Europe.
Oh, were the interviews last week the second two? Those are you? It was a little hard to tell, you know. There's a lot of pixels on the screen. Shout out to
Mark's internet.
Or maybe there wasn't a lot of pixels.
Right, exactly.
I thought the Slovenia internet was fine.
It was great.
Yeah, the Slovenia internet was solid.
I don't know what happened when you went to London.
When I went to
always
London,
the Brits.
But listen, you know, I don't think anybody's tuning in to like see me. They might want to listen to what I have to say, but like it's not going to hurt anybody if my face is pixelated. Is that
it'll only help?
Is that the right word?
It only helps.
They have to make sure. They have to make sure it's really you.
To get in here today, this is I cannot believe how fast they built this thing.
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful office. This is one of our two sets that you'll see us do this show from, and yeah.
That's right. From Elijah, the DLLS Palace, as Mark dubbed it the other day when we were talking on one of our
Dallas
previous
Palace.
shows.
It is palatial.
It is very palatial. I would agree with that. You guys have a good Labor Day weekend, Bobby, Tim? Good Labor Day weekend?
Oh, it was great. It was great. I can't believe it's raining so much. I was looking at the weather earlier today. Lows are in the 60s all week. We're so close.
What?
We're so close to fall.
We're so
close to basketball.
We are almost
it is
back
like
for real.
Unimaginable levels of back.
I'm wearing a jacket.
Is that how you felt today? Jacket weather.
The people,
for you?
the people don't know.
The rain.
They don't know. They will soon see that is your go-to jacket. I think I've seen that jacket more than once.
I've got some new jackets
to get another jacket
for the
too.
rotation.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is
to.
a good rain jacket. You know, it's kind of a coach jacket.
It is.
You call it a coach jacket.
It is because it is 100% a coach
What
jacket.
does that mean?
I was going to ask the same question, but you beat me to it.
Like a jacket that a coach would wear?
Well,
or like
no,
it's a style.
For old people like me, coaches wore those. Like if you I bet if you punch in coach jacket, a jacket like that will come up with the buttons.
Shout out Daniel. A very good friend of mine.
Oh, Dan. Dude,
Yeah.
Dan is awesome.
We love Dan.
Glad I stayed up until midnight in Australia to see you guys live. Well, shout out to you for staying up until midnight watching this
Hey,
live as well.
don't
that screen is pretty
give him too
good.
much ego.
I'm just
what is the
saying.
future
Even
like?
I can read that, which is amazing because
Yeah.
it's everywhere I've worked that there has been any kind of live chat mechanism. I am hopeless. I cannot deal with live questions. So like.
Oh, you're gonna have plenty of them today. You got to deal
here's
with.
the thing. First, I thought this is awesome. Kevin will read all the questions. But like I can actually.
Yep.
I think I can read that.
You can. You got no excuse not to read any of the questions that have come into the chat today. By the way, the quickest way you can help us grow here at DLLS, like, comment, and subscribe here at DLLS Sports on YouTube. Also, alldlls.com/diehard. Become a diehard member today. A lot of cool stuff. Member only Discord. All kinds of stuff that we'll get into later on in the show. And today, Make sure you throw your questions in the chat. A little bit later on, we're going to have the Stein line. That's right, a whole dedicated segment for you to be able to have your questions be answered by Marc Stein himself. We'll answer other questions throughout the show as well. So we want you to start flooding the chat with those questions.
What if they want to ask Cato something?
They can. We don't have an Ask Cato segment today. That's coming up later on at some point.
Last
down the
week
road.
was enough. You
That's
guys
right.
have already
Exactly.
spiked that from the
Run out of
rundown.
questions.
Although Coach Cato might be starting the trend now. all
I
of a
prefer
sudden.
asking questions, not answering them.
Oh, you want to ask the questions, not the
Yeah.
one being answering the questions?
Well, I love knowledge and
you told me
obtaining
last
more
week
of it.
you were a question and answer. You came up with the question and answer. You said that last week.
Bookmark that one.
Yeah, I
Ask
think
me
that
my
was
favorite thing I ate in
I think that was a
Slovenia.
lie.
Remind me when we get to the
Yeah.
my favorite thing I ate in Slovenia.
Yeah, I think I was being a
Oh
little bit
yeah!
dishonest with you.
Shout out to
Kevin.
Reader's Digest already throwing in a great question as well.
Bookmark that one.
Yeah, we can do that. We can
Well,
do
let's
that
jump
for sure.
into it. Marc Stein in studio. A lot to get to coming up at 10, at about 9 minutes. Yeah, in about 9 minutes. Mark Cuban and Jalen Brunson got together on the Roommate Show and had a chance to discuss what actually happened with Jalen Brunson's free agency. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But before we get there, obviously the Mavericks, now the calendar's turned to September, which means that Media Day is only 27 days away for your Dallas Mavericks. Training camp beginning at the beginning of October as well. So we're getting closer to basketball, gentlemen. I'll just go around the table. How are we feeling now that we're in the month of September? Basketball is around the corner, and what that means is we get geared up toward previews and talking about this team, a team that made it to the finals last year.
Well, look, Labor Day is obviously a major holiday on the calendar for everyone, but I've always, at least last 20 years, have come to regard the day after Labor Day. It is somewhat of a holiday in the NBA because today is the day where practice facilities all around the league, players will start to trickle back in. It's not going to be all the vets, but the younger guys, the Mavs will have today, I guarantee you, we won't be in there to see, but I'm sure there will be 5, 6, 7 players at least, maybe even more, who come in. I heard last week there were already players who were in town and getting in the gym because the modern NBA player, when I started covering the league a bazillion years ago, players really took, the offseason was off.
Yeah.
But now the pickup games, they start right after Labor Day, and guys are getting in the gym. You probably saw last night I was writing about Davis Bertans and going to Golden State's gym to basically audition to try to get a training camp invite for the Warriors because the time is now. The time is here. 27 days, a little under 4 weeks, but basically gyms, those doors open. The business has begun again, and steadily Mavs players will start to make their way back. And look, we talked about it. They were almost the whole team was together in LA for a whole week last month. So guys are already getting after it, which is, again, I think in the modern NBA, you have to do that. Not every team does that. And the Mavs had 15 or 16 guys in LA, which to me is a crazy turnout. The only guys who weren't there, as far as I understood it, was the guys who are not in the United States. Luka, obviously, he had commitments in Slovenia, just was in China, and Dwight Powell just went to the Olympics with Canada. But basically everybody else, including Markieff Morris, who hasn't even officially been signed yet.
They got guys that aren't even on the team.
Working out together.
They were in LA getting workouts in. So, yeah, I mean, on one hand, it's going to be a miserably long wait till September 30th when Media Day hits. But on the other hand, we are dribbling closer and closer.
Well, now you guys know why Mark is finally in the studio with us. We were waiting for the younger guys to report. So and say, hey, the podcast doors have opened for you.
The old.
What a difference a year, though, makes, right, Tim? It was about a year ago, maybe even a year ago, Labor Day weekend, that you and I were huddled up in one of our media friends' kitchens, having some pretty existential conversations about what might happen around here if the season didn't go the way that the Mavs had hoped. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Coming off the 22-23 season.
Tell us whose kitchen it was.
All right, it was
A
Kirk
kitchen
Serious
not to be
Face's
named.
kitchen, all right? We were at Kirk
Serious
Henderson's
Face.
house. But Tim and I were talking about some stuff that we'd heard and some feelings that might have been being felt by people in that building, and thinking, man, if
Things that were felt.
it gets to be November and December and things aren't looking too good, then what exactly is going to happen around here? And then the next thing you know, it's kind of it feels like we're in a whole new world.
Winning cures a lot of feelings.
It does.
Can I take it
Yeah.
even a step farther?
Oh, please.
I went to Madrid. I didn't go to the 2 games in Abu Dhabi, but I sent myself to Madrid. A big reason why is because I love Madrid.
It's Madrid.
But so with my hometown team in Madrid, and I knew this would happen. Like I probably had one of my longest conversations with Mark Cuban all last season in Madrid because I knew he was just kind of hang around the hotel and not necessarily venture out too much. So it was a good way when. I found that over the years that when you travel with a team, but when you go really far away with a team, like they're almost happy to see you. Most of the time they don't love us being around, but you go to Madrid, you take them way out of their comfort zone. It's like, hey,
familiar face.
I know you. You're
Yeah.
okay. The vibe and mood after that on that trip, like the doomsday mood was already building because it's like both Luka and Kyrie picked up injuries.
You finished 5-11 with them together.
Coming right off that, the way the previous season ended, falling all the way from the Western Conference Finals to 11th. I mean, you wouldn't have found a soul in that traveling party who thought that a run to the NBA Finals was forthcoming. I mean, it felt pretty gloomy after what I keep calling it. It's the longest preseason trip ever in terms of mileage, playing 3 games. So just to think where they were mid-October
Sure.
and where they are now. Big difference.
Even after 49 games, we were thinking, what's really going to happen with this team? I think they were around 26 and 23 at that point, and then all of a sudden, obviously the trades that were made for Daniel Gafford, P.J. Washington, they turned the defense around and make a run all the way to the NBA Finals. And Bob, you brought up something interesting because thinking about what we were looking at last year for this team and now a year later, the vibe has completely changed around the expectations around this team, what we think they can be, and what they've been able to add in terms of obviously Klay Thompson. What is your mindset thinking about what was last year and now fast forwarding that to this year and what you're feeling going for this team there?
Yeah, big kind of attitudinal shift is last year they had to prove that they're not that bad. And this year, I guess they have the opportunity to prove that they're that good. So it's just kind of a different, they're going to carry themselves a little differently. Maybe there's a little less desperation, but there's certainly hopefully like a job's not finished kind of approach. They went to the finals, but they lost rather convincingly. And one of the teams they knocked out on the way got a whole lot better in OKC. And so, it's not like you're going to waltz right back there, but I think they have a feeling that they got better. We sat in here last week and said that we think they might have got better too. So they should be better, Tim.
I thought you were going to say the Clippers.
Oh, no. Maybe. I mean, they did get Derrick Jones. I was
going to say they replaced a 3 who went to the finals with a 3 who's never been there.
That is so true.
That is very true.
That is so
actually.
true.
I guess you meant Oklahoma City though.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a pretty good team. It's all interesting. It's gonna be, but it's so different from where it was, and even the 4 of us, at this table, who are not literally in that locker room and not literally feeling those. Like we can all tell you right now, it is. Just
I was feeling it a little
different.
bit last year, Tim.
Yeah.
there was all
I was
sorts of
saying,
stuff
I'm
being
sure there's a
said.
little
You're in the
different feeling for
trenches.
you. Yeah, being there for sure.
You were fully in the trenches.
Yeah,
so.
there was a lot of stuff going on last year.
By the way, shout out to Katya, who's noticing Bobby's haircut this morning. Shout out to you, Bobby, for getting
Hi, Kat. I miss you.
for getting your haircut. You feel good? You feel good after a haircut?
I feel good. I feel much lighter. Just
lighter?
Okay. Like a little kind of do this without.
It's one of the reasons I had to go to London. If you guys,
you went to London all the way to go get a haircut?
Do you guys know? Do you know the legend of a Turkish barber?
I don't.
This sounds frightening.
Have you ever?
Can you tell us in a minute? Can you tell us?
Have you ever heard of an ear flaming?
No.
That sounds awful.
That sounds
That
terrifying.
kind of sounds fun.
Of course, it sounds fun to you, Tim.
You have to be daring like me to do it, but they. Maybe it's.
No, wait, hold on. What? you did the whole motion and then you left it hanging.
Well, I don't know if it's like this is one of those too much information deals, but like they clean your ears with a flame.
Whoa,
They get a flame.
wait, what?
And they go and like it's
and it works.
and it works and it's intense
Wow.
and it's like it's like a real flame.
That sounds terrifying.
we got to get one in the studio. Do it live,
Yeah, can we do that? Can we fly someone in from London?
dude. I'm absolutely down.
Sounds like from Turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
I'm about to say it sounded like we
but
did that.
London is closer.
Turkish people live in Dallas. Is a very international city. Hey, if you're watching and you know anybody, slide my DMs.
Wow, there you go. Slide in Bobby's DMs. Shout out to Slovenia. Sanjay, hello from Slovenia. We're actually from Croatia since I'm on vacation. Okay, well, there you go. Shout out to all y'all in the chat as well. Again, throw your questions in there. We're going to be answering the questions throughout the entirety of our show today. Coming up in just a moment, Jalen Brunson and Marc Cuban had a conversation about what actually went down between the Mavericks and Brunson, but did they tell the whole story? We'll get into that here in just a moment. But before we get there, Bobby, talk to me about Empire Today.
Let's talk flooring, gentlemen. With Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they got copycats, they got failed imitators, but Empire can't be beaten on quality and service, and most importantly, on speed. They put the floor in the studio in like half a morning the other day. It was incredible. It was incredible. They also pride themselves on allowing consumers to shop for floors where they have their floors. So use their virtual floor designer. It's a great way to see how your new floors will look in any space. And they service their own warranties. So if an issue does arise, just call Empire. They will service all the warranties themselves. You don't got to worry about any. You don't got to track down a manufacturer's phone number or go chasing shadows or anything.
What if I find like an imitator?
Don't
seems like them.
Don't believe them. Okay. They're probably lying to you. Only trust Empire Today for your flooring needs. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive 350 buckaroos off when they use promo code DLLS. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/DLLS for details. Again, promo code DLLS.
And once you get that new flooring, you got to get yourself a new pair of sunglasses as well at Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. That's a lot of people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They probably have a style in your favorite team's colors, like the Mavericks or the Cowboys, Stars, or Rangers. See what I did there? I wear Shady Rays while I definitely go out on all my activities, going to the park with my daughter. They have great fit, great style, great everything when it comes to Shady Rays in terms of their fit and their clarity. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, which I know you will, but if you don't, exchange for a new pair or return within 30 days, worry-free. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DLLS for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people today. Shout out to Shady Rays. Gentlemen, Jalen Brunson and Marc Cuban had a chance to have a conversation on the Roommate Show where we finally, we think, got the whole story between what happened with Jalen Brunson eventually going to the New York Knicks to team up with Daddy and Tom Thibodeau in the Big Apple, which led to a series of events that helped your Mavericks eventually get to the NBA Finals. I want to play this clip here. It's about 10 minutes long. Jalen Brunson, Marc Cuban on the Roommate Show, Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart's show, talking about what, quote-unquote, really happened between the Mavericks, Marc Cuban, and Jalen Brunson. Take a listen and watch.
We go into free agency, right, and then I have a meeting with the Knicks, and then after the Knicks, there's a scheduled meeting with the Mavs, right? Is everything I'm saying factual so far, Mark?
Kind of, sort of, except for the meeting part wasn't quite the way it was set up, right? Because they wanted us to come to New York, and we were like, okay, but what are we going to discuss? We need to have some reference on what we're going to be talking about if we come to New York.
Right.
And, you know, we're like, we want to keep them, but we're not going to just show up in New York for you just to say no. Right. And, you know, like I told you, there was a time where it was, okay, what is the number? Give us a feel. Well, can't talk to JB. He's going to a wedding. And that was pretty much the last we heard.
I was going to the wedding.
What year was this?
Oh, it was
it Josh's?
No, hell no. It was Sekou's wedding. It was Sekou's wedding. Yeah, it was Sekou's wedding. So that was, like I said, from my point of view. And so once we got the number from the Knicks, right? Once we got the number from the Knicks and everything, like I said, I'm gonna keep saying this from Jalen Brunson's point of view. I didn't hear anything else from the Mavericks, right? And it wasn't from the Mavericks. It was my agent saying to me, "Oh, like they're not giving us a number, and all that in the third." And so, yeah,
we weren't hearing back from there, right? We were like, "What's give us a range? What's the number?" We put up a number. They said too low, and then they were like, "Well, where do we need to be?" We were hoping we'd have a home court advantage, right? He'd been here, 4 years, at least give us that opportunity. And then when it came down to it, and it looked like you were going to go to the Knicks, so it was like, well, really, the only number that's going to make it work is a max out contract, and that was the last of it.
Reactions, gentlemen. Jalen Brunson, Mark Cuban on the Roommate Show discussing what really happened with Jalen Brunson eventually signing a long-term deal with the Knicks. Of course, became an All-NBA player this past year. It worked out for the Mavericks quite nicely. They eventually got Kyrie Irving, and the Mavericks went to the NBA Finals. Tim Cato, I'll start with you. Reaction initially to hearing Jalen Brunson, Mark Cuban discuss what actually went down between the two of them from their perspectives.
I was uncomfortable watching that.
The awkwardness, were you?
I found it quite awkward at several given points. I don't think they really told the whole story. We're going to get into that, but just they just started it too late anyway. We'll talk about that, but just the entire tenor of what was going on, it was just, I don't know really why either of them felt they had to do that.
Yeah, I just want to take a shower, honestly.
Wow. Drop, please. Thank you, Tanner. Appreciate that.
It's just like, man, I don't know. It just two people that know each other very well talking about something really uncomfortable and sensitive, and they didn't do a very good job of making me feel comfortable while listening.
Cuban, Mark Cuban was never going to change his stance about what happened. Mm-hmm. I think that was very clear.
I mean, he very publicly gave his stance on that thing many, many times, to the point now where many Mavs fans are like, please, God, just stop talking about it,
Well, I would say this. I mean, look, I had high hopes for this thing. I had heard that this was in the works, and I actually was wondering why it took a long time from the time that I heard this podcast was coming for it to actually happen. So on one hand, I mean, it's a great get for that podcast, and it's, to me, the awkwardness was authentic. That made it real because it is very awkward. But I guess I had all these hopes that there was going to be some
a real tell-all type situation.
I mean, maybe not tell-all, but tell some.
Sure.
And it's just like they didn't get anywhere near. And look, their podcast is fantastic. The chemistry those guys have on the court is fantastic. We've seen this explosion of player podcasts, and on one hand, it has brought a level of candor to the sport that we didn't have before, like Paul George detailing his negotiations with the Clippers, that's a free agent story. You don't have to be a Clipper fan or a Sixer fan to be interested in that. Mm-hmm. We want that content. But the problem in this case, okay, they convinced Cuban to come on, but there is just there's no neutral party to ask some questions, because that is a story that really started before Jalen Brunson's last season. And there are so many questions that, to get them both together, you would love to ask, okay, well, what was the discussion about an extension before the start of the season?
Sure.
What was the discussion about an extension in January, when it's been reported that Jalen's father went back to the Mavs and said, yes, we will do that deal? And I know that from the Mavericks' perspective, they do not look at that approach the same way that the Jalen Brunson camp does.
And maybe came back at that time with an ultimatum, maybe came back with certain qualifiers saying, yeah, if you sign this contract right now. But yeah,
there were just no questions or discussion about any of that. And the reality is, I mean, I lived that thing. The minute the Knicks made those draft day moves to create all that cap space, the Mavericks knew they were losing Brunson. I mean, he was gone. And so, again, this was a story that literally spanned 9, 10, 11 months, and they just didn't get into any of it. And it was just this rudderless review of what happened. And so, maybe it's my fault for expecting big things, and
I will say it's rare to even see that kind of interaction, because we're not so far removed from this actually happening between the Mavericks, Cuban, and Jalen Brunson. The fact that they actually sat down and even broached the idea, I think, is kind of rare based on what we're seeing in today's media landscape. But at the same time, it's still interesting to see the two of them try to talk about this, but so many details being left out on what actually happened. Let's start to try to fill in some of those details. Tim, I'll start with you. From your perspective, what you heard and listened to, what more can you try to fill in based off of what wasn't shared based on what was talked about between the two of them?
Well, this obviously isn't realistic, but maybe the better podcast, based off everything Cuban has said and alleged and his viewing and what he believes happened in this event, maybe the better podcast was Mark Cuban and Rick Brunson. Because Rick Brunson is the guy that Mark consistently said, was superseding above and beyond what, he was bypassing the agent. This is someone that, according to everything I heard in the moment is that, it was Rick Brunson who was in charge. And that came up on the podcast. And Jalen was clearly uncomfortable with that. That was the one time that he pushed back at Mark and said, well, that's not my perspective of things. And if that's true, then maybe the actual people most involved in this decision or most involved in Mark's version of events that led to Brunson leaving were not actually the people he was discussing. It was not actually people on this podcast. So,
because he had said moments before, whenever Dallas drafted him, his dad is the one that told him that he was going to go to Dallas at 33. So clearly Rick was involved in his career.
Yeah.
And Rick also got a job with the Knicks as the Knicks were making all these trades. So, it was just, you could feel it coming.
I mean, look, and I think this terrain has been pretty well covered.
Sure.
But basically, the Mavericks had the opportunity to sign Jalen Brunson at a very favorable number before the season and during the season. And the consistent message during the season was they didn't want to do that in case some sort of amazing trade opportunity came. And it wasn't just Jalen Brunson. The same thing was in effect with Dorian Finney-Smith. But as that season went on, Jalen just kept playing better and better and better. And it was obvious that he was going to command a much better deal than the Mavericks could offer in season to that point. But my big quarrels with it, when the season ended, the Mavericks go to the conference finals. Based on everything that I've been told, I think there was the period before free agency really starts where, okay, technically you're not supposed to talk to your own free agent, but he is still a Maverick, and anybody and everybody in the organization could have maintained a level of dialogue with Jalen Brunson. I'm not sure that it was maintained to the level it needed to be. But honestly, my number one quarrel with the whole thing, no matter how many times along the way the Mavs fumbled opportunities to sign him at the bargain deal that was on the table, once it became apparent that the Knicks were clearing cap space, hiring his dad, we knew the Knicks were going to offer in the $100 million range. To me, the Mavericks at that point should have thrown a Hail Mary. They should have made one last attempt to, and again, it's hard for me to believe, given how integral a member of the organization Jalen Brunson was, that he was not reachable. He might have been at a wedding, but I'm pretty sure
he was at a wedding with players on the team and people from the office.
Somebody,
there's
somebody could have said something.
Somebody in the organization could have gotten.
Hey, Cuban trying to call you, JB. He's trying to call you.
I would just say my biggest quarrel with the Mavericks in that scenario was that the last move should have been a call from someone significant in the organization, whether it's Mark Cuban, Nico Harrison, Jason Kidd, whoever you want it to be. If it's not Mark Cuban, most likely it would have been Cuban, but it could have been someone else. Jalen, we've messed this thing up. We've screwed it up. We are offering you we're offering you 150 over 5, or even more. I think the max was 175.
I don't think they wanted to do that though.
Right. But
yeah.
they had that choice. And to me, if you throw that Hail Mary, if you call Jalen Brunson and say, we're offering you 150 over 5, please stay. We've screwed it up to this point. If you do that, then you can say, we tried everything to keep him, and he decided he wanted to be a Knick. But that Hail Mary wasn't thrown, and that, to me, is the part that I know a lot of Mavs fans don't want to look back, and this team just went to the finals. And amazingly, just like losing Steve Nash, this team has rebounded in an amazing way after losing Brunson. So I know not everyone wants to go back and look at it, but if we're going to go back and look at it, and it's this podcast that's making us go back and look at it, that's the biggest thing I would have done differently.
I also should note that, Jalen and Jalen's camp did reach out to the Mavericks a week before free agency to be like, okay, do you have a figure? And the Mavericks were, their response at the time, as best I understand it, was something to the effect of, well, we don't want to tip our hand to New York. Which really, if I'm parsing what that means 2 years later, it's that they weren't going to offer anything competitive. And that's what led to the lack of meeting and the whole, the argument that Marc says we were not given a chance to give a meeting. No, you were given a chance to provide monetary, financial figures well in advance of that meeting. And clearly the one that they were going to provide was not something that was even going to be competitive to what the Knicks were offering. So there was no point of having that meeting.
When the season ended, the figure rumbling around was that the Mavs would have loved, in their dream scenario, to do a deal that was like in the 85 to 90 million range. Jalen Brunson had already outplayed that level.
Sure.
I mean, they don't get out of the Utah series
without him,
if Jalen Brunson doesn't go wild and score 80-plus points in 2 games.
But they had the sentimental video all ready to go for that meeting on July 1st. No, they did. They did. I'm not joking.
Wow.
Like, they did. And for some reason, basically their version of events is that, well, Thad and his loyalty and all this video, montage of his loyalty, that's going to sway him, and that's going to make him come back here on a cheaper deal. And yes, they were planning for the Knicks not to offer that much money.
And
also,
also, let's also say, there was, one of the points which Jalen did address in the conversation with Mark Cuban, he referenced the interview.
Your interview.
With Mark Cuban in the hallway of Chase Center after the Warriors have eliminated the Mavs. And Mark Cuban said, we have the ability to pay Jalen Brunson more than any other team. And Jalen Brunson clearly heard that, but that offer never materialized. And that, again, that's where that would be my foremost quarrel with this thing. Just it's been mishandled for months. Jalen, we screwed up. Here is a monster offer. Don't go to the Knicks. This is home. You belong here. And that didn't happen.
If trust is already eroding, then you don't want to say one thing publicly and then not do it privately.
We'll definitely have more on that. And, of course, we want you to get your questions in the chat right now. Coming up in just a moment, we're going to have the Stein line. He's going to be answering your questions about the Mavericks, the NBA offseason, everything else. Jump those into the chat right now. But before we get there, Tim, talk to me a little bit about Rugged Road, will you?
Yeah. Do we think that the Marc and Jalen relationship will ever get good enough that they're going to go tubing on the San Marcos River?
I hope so.
I really hope so.
What a
as well.
wholesome experience.
Because if they do, I've got a product for them. I've got exactly what they need. They need Rugged Road, specifically the Rugged Road coolers, which always floats upright. You're never going to lose a drink. I've actually lost a drink or two in the San Marcos River. It's not something you ever want to happen on a day like that. I don't know why you would say it like that.
You put a ham sandwich in the cooler.
Unlike other heavy-duty coolers, Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport on any trip without compromising the performance. They're crafted to handle the toughest environments, which I would not describe the San Marcos River quite as that. So they can do more than the San Marcos River. Their coolers are built to last, ensuring they can keep up with any adventure. They also guarantee that they're going to keep their contents cool for up to 7 days. So gear up for your next adventure with Rugged Road coolers. Reliable, durable, and built to be used. Rugged Road is your ultimate outdoor companion. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use the code DLLS for 10% off.
Fellas, you need a job? Well, actually, you don't need a job. Do you need a job? These guys don't need a job. If you do need a job, definitely check out Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find your quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it's intuitive. It matches your job preferences with the things that you're looking for, leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join the more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. You do. It is time for the Stein line here on DLLS Mavs, where our National and Mavericks insider Marc Stein is going to be answering your questions here in just a moment. Did you have something?
Were we done?
You look like you was ready to say something.
No.
You had this inquisitive look.
I'm just trying to get a handle on learning how to read the screen and try to be natural. I don't have your hosting. You know, you are a veteran of operating.
Do we all think we were
the
done on
captain's chair.
Brunson? Was there anything else to cover? We were running up on a break. Okay,
Oh, sure.
yeah.
So, Tim, I saw
over.
you responded to Ben in the chat, but as Tanner starts prepping the questions, we get ready to go. We connect to the Stein line. Although I guess if you're here, it's not really a phone, is it? It's like a theoretical, abstract line.
Go with the bit, Bobby.
As we prepare to do that. So Ben asked a question in the chat. Are the Mavs in the same place now if JB stayed? I honestly don't think so. Brunson wanted to be the star, not second fiddle. Tim and I wrote an article at alldls.com.
I see what you're doing there.
Talking about a hypothetical scenario in which Brunson did re-sign with the Mavs for a max or near max that summer.
Let me just say, at the time, they didn't know they were going to be able to trade for Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
At the time, also, they had so little in the way of trade assets. Had they re-signed Jalen Brunson, their phone would have never, ever, ever stopped ringing from other teams trying to pilfer him away from Dallas. So that was a case for re-signing Jalen as much as great as he had played. It wasn't just that. If you sign him, you now have a player that everyone is going to be. But
I think Jalen knew that a little bit too.
No question, and that's why he was not gonna just take 490 or 4100. You had to give him a monster offer. And look, he wanted to be a Knick. It has been a spectacular match. He is their franchise guy. It's been nothing but success and great vibes for them since they got him. And I think it's clear. He really did. I don't think he was unhappy in Dallas, but he's insanely happy as a Knick and being the face of that franchise. But I mean, that's a hard hypothetical for us to answer because you just don't know what would have happened.
It is hard. If gun to my head, I think that if Jalen had re-signed in Dallas, he would not be here. This one is much harder to prove, but I kind of still think Kyrie would be here. And most crucially to the team's success in the finals run that just happened, if Jalen Brunson had been on the team 2 seasons ago, Dallas would not have been so bad that they ended up getting, just an absolute stroke of luck and good fortune in Derek Lively II. I do think that the catastrophic season, there's no way. I think it was a very bad process that led to Dallas allowing Jalen Brunson to walk. I think the process was bad, but I think the results,
which again
worked out.
Was very Nash-like.
Yeah.
The process was bad, but
a lot of good fortune.
They made good trades after and ended up winning a championship. So, I mean, kudos to the Mavs for whatever criticisms we've levied here. I mean,
they pivoted really well.
They're bouncing for the second time. They're bouncing back from an own goal really strongly.
I see what you did with the soccer reference. That was good, Mark. Let's go ahead and jump into the chat. Let's get some of these questions going for us to be able to have the Stein line be answered here on the show from Shadow66440. Shout out to that username. How does the new ownership compare to Mark so far?
We're still learning about it. I mean, the biggest difference is, Mark Cuban talked to us every day. This ownership, they don't really do media, so it's a little bit harder to pinpoint. I mean, they've, based on everything I understand, have given Nico Harrison great latitude, and I think around the league we know the reviews of Nico's trade deadline dealings are, all complimentary, and those trades really changed the trajectory of the Mavs season. I think in free agency they were able to do even more than they hoped by getting Clay. We discussed this a little bit last week during launch week that getting Clay was priority number one, but to also get Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes in secondary moves. I mean, they really did as much as they hoped for. So I think things are going in a very positive direction, but kind of like what Bobby said at the top, this team has high expectations, just went to the finals, and how this team backs it up and follows that up that's going to shape what we say and how we think of where things are.
What else we got, Tanner?
It's definitely quieter. The difference between the two, quieter, I think is accurate.
In my experience, though, a very similar demand of excellence and success and profitability, and you don't become that wealthy by failing. So the Dumont family expects big things.
I mean, they're business people first.
Sure.
But look, I mean, one
family,
small thing. I mean, the Mavs are going to training camp in Vegas. That is their turf. So that's already...
Which had Mavs fans freaking out. Like, what is happening with the team?
I don't know if anyone's
not
asked that in the chat, but yes. The NBA, let's just say the Mavs do not want to relocate, but let's pretend that there was some secret plan. The league is never going to let a highly successful franchise in a top 5 media market move to Vegas when they can get bazillions of dollars in an expansion fee by bringing in a new team to Vegas.
Sure.
They don't need to move Dallas to Vegas. They want a new... If there is going to be a Vegas franchise, it's going to be a new team paying exorbitant franchise fees to 30 other owners who are eagerly going to lap up all that cash. And remember, if in expansion, the players, that money doesn't go to players. That is purely money that the current existing teams get. So if there's a Vegas team, it is going to be an expansion team.
From Catalyst,
Silvergut shooters.
will the Mavs be a more motion offense with Clay in the starting lineup this season?
I don't think it is going to be a drastic change. What I do anticipate is there will be Klay Thompson offensive packages worked into what they're doing. Like, I don't think you're going to go too far away from Luka-centric, Kyrie-centric offense, but there will be – it's not just going to be Klay in the corner, and it will depend on what guards he's playing next to, what lineups he's in, but I don't think there's any question. I mean, there were plays run for Tim Hardaway Jr. last season, so there are going to be plays designed and offensive structures implemented that take advantage of Klay Thompson's strengths. I don't think there's any question.
Me and Bobby talk about this all the time, but you're one of the first people to say that the offense of last year is not an offense that is like wholly dissimilar to a player like Klay Thompson that there are spots for him to fit into.
Yeah, there are spots. Now, Klay used more off-screen possessions last year than the entire Mavericks team. So, we're talking about vastly different levels of motion. But I think especially when Luka's off the floor or just not playing, I think they might get a little more creative. But when Luka's on the floor, it is spread the floor.
So what do you think? How do you feel about the fit? When you first heard Klay Thompson was coming here, what did you...
I do like the fit because Dallas does run a lot of like double screens. So whether it's a double drag, Luka going left to right, or Spain pick and rolls, that stack action where it would be Tim or sometimes Kyrie where that guy can pop out. Over the last 4 years, 3 of the last 4 seasons, the most efficient pick and roll combination on the team was not Luka and a big. It was Luka and Tim Hardaway Jr. Mm-hmm. And Klay is a much better, more consistent shooter than Hardaway and demands a lot more attention than him. So I feel like in those actions, which are very simple, unscripted, read and react, I think it's a really good fit. But I don't think they're gonna reimagine or even redesign their offense around Klay. I think it's more he's going to fit here. They might do a little more of what they did with Tim, but it's going to be Klay is going to have to fit in here.
And that action is what really beat Minnesota in multiple games in that series in the conference final. They kept running that stack action. that 3-man pick and roll or two screens, and then Luka coming off and playing off them, or Kyrie playing off them, and that was something that Minnesota couldn't solve, like that entire
Minnesota
series.
doesn't want to switch. When you play teams that don't want to switch, that is going to destroy them. Especially if they have a big, they want to keep around the rim. That kind of stuff isn't going to work against Boston, though. But you have hopefully 82 games and 3 playoff rounds to figure out what to do against them.
And Kevin, I don't want to take your job here, but I think Bobby's actually writing about this week.
That's so true,
if
Tim.
you're a diehard.
Oh my God!
If you're a diehard.
No, if you're a diehard, you can read it. I'm writing about it no matter what.
Oh,
So
he's
if you're a
going to
diehard, you
write
can
about
read
it.
Become a diehard today. I'll tell you
Become
more
a
about how to
diehard.
do that in a second.
We'll do that here in just a moment. I appreciate the toss of the segue, though, Tim. Thank you so much. We'll answer more of your questions here in just a moment. Here, as we got Marc Stein live in studio. He's going to be with us all week here on DLLS Mass. But before we get there, Bobby, talk to me more about becoming a diehard here at DLLS.
Yeah, so the main perk of becoming a diehard is you get to read my written article about how Klay Thompson will fit in the Mavs offense. But also, if you sign up today at alldlls.com/diehard, you get a free shirt, which pays for almost half of the membership. We got more than 35 shirt options right now. We're going to be rolling out more soon. So you get a promo code. You can sit on that bad boy until a shirt drops that you like. Or if you see one in the shop right now, like that Skyline shirt on the left.
I need that Skyline
fire.
Then you want to go and get that one right now. Those shirts, by the way, if you ordered one already, they will be shipping very soon. But another big perk of becoming a diehard is you get access to the diehard only Discord. Over the weekend, Tim and I were talking about our music taste with a few other diehards, and I dropped in my Spotify. This is over the last year or so, my top 30 artists on Spotify. I'm not going to spoil the whole thing. You got to become a diehard to see it. But my number 2 most listened artist is Father John Misty. And you better believe I'm going to do everything I can to get him up to number 1 as soon as possible.
I thought you were going to say get him in studio.
But that's why I thought I was going
Hey,
to.
Josh Tillman, if you're in town, come to the DLLS studio. We can talk all about music. But yeah,
Or
there's a whole lot. Or
Maybe
the
he's
Mavs.
a big NBA fan.
Or
You
the
don't know
Mavs.
that.
But there's a whole lot more going on in there. So become a diehard today. Get on the Discord. Get yourself a free shirt. Get discounts on merch and events and everything. It's great. So just do it, please. Just do it.
Please do that. Go to alldlls.com/diehard to become a diehard member today. Also, the best way you can grow our show here is to like, comment, and subscribe. I need you to smash that like button here and let us know that you're enjoying the content as well. As we finish up today here on our episode of DLLS Mavs, Marc Stein live in studio. Continue to throw those questions into the chat as well as we continue to answer all those that we can before we get out of here on our show today. Tim, you can throw that last one that we had up there before we went to break. Mark, in your experience, what was the most chaotic transactional period while you were covering the Mavericks? Was it Dirk's draft night, Luka's draft night, or any trade deadline deals?
Man, that's a good question. With no prep time, I'm going to have to think about that one. I mean, look, the Dirk Nash, I would say, was the most memorable. But
At the time, though, it wasn't really like a.
was it? It was a big deal. It was a big deal for me because I had just moved here, and the morning news was. I mean, the morning news was the best sports section in the country in those days. And, like, just covering the draft the way we did. David Moore, actually Cowboys reporter now, still at the morning news. And one of the lures for me was David Moore was an incredible NBA columnist in those days. He went to the draft. It was in Vancouver. Like, it was a big deal. And, Don Nelson was such a wheeler dealer. And before that draft, I had written a piece that Dirk was on the Mavs' radar, maybe Saturday or Sunday before the draft, which I think was on a Wednesday or Thursday like it normally is. But after that, Don Nelson told me, we're not drafting Nowitzki. Dan Gadzarich kicked his ass in his workout. There was no workout. It was a total lie. And after the draft, the Mavs make their moves to get Nowitzki and Nash. And I remember, Nelly, you told me that Gadzarich kicked Dirk's ass. What happened? And that's when he gave me a very important lesson that I never forgot. Don't believe a word I say before the NBA draft. And at least he was
this lion season during the draft.
Very honest. And it was just, that was classic Nelly, just completely. And also just, it was such a different time. Like Dirk had the 33-point game at the Hoop Summit, which we all know is legend, but he still went 9th. That would never happen today, that he slipped all the way down. Like, after that Hoop Summit game, he would have been, and that was a great draft, but like, he wouldn't have been 9th. And it's like, it was still such a different time where like, there was like,
Paul Pierce went 10th too,
Yeah,
which is
I mean, it's just
that doesn't even make sense. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, look, there have been a lot of crazy transactional periods. So like, I would really have to. That might be a good piece for a whole article to really sit back. I mean, I remember, when they got the two Antoines, that was crazy. And I mean, like I said, if I really sat here, we could probably do
the DeAndre Jordan day was.
Yeah, no.
I remember that one being very chaotic, and I was, I was barely a reporter at the time, but I still remember that one.
And that
just the chaos that came
selfishly,
from that.
selfishly, that was a fun one for me because I was able. I had the first tweet that the Clippers are working on convincing DeAndre Jordan to renege on his offer to Dallas, and it just unleashed a day
That was
in
so crazy
internet
that day.
history that will never be forgotten. So I mean,
selfishly, that was a horrific weekend at the Mavs office. Just completely terrifying stuff.
I could only imagine what was going through everybody's minds.
good question.
Yeah.
I got to give that one more thought.
From Victor, can you share your pre-draft thoughts on Luka? Did you see that coming and what we see in Luka Doncic today?
Yeah, so I can't say that I don't know that anybody saw this, but I was definitely in the Luka camp, and I definitely thought I knew the Mavs were going to do everything they could to get him, and I thought he was going to be the best player in that draft. Now I had the advantage of I've always covered European basketball. That's been like one of my go-to things. So I had a lot of people from that part of the world telling me, you won't believe this guy. And I think maybe we talked about didn't we talk about my biggest basketball regret? Did we?
Yes, with Igor Kokoshkov.
Yeah, so in the summer of 2017, which was a very chaotic and time filled with personal turmoil for me, Igor Kokoshkov, future Mavs assistant coach, he was Slovenia's head coach, and he said, "Why don't you join our staff as an assistant coach?" Which I would have just really been an observer. Come with us to Eurobasket, sit behind the bench, and just be there. Luka was obviously the co-star of that team at whatever he was, 17, 18. Goran Dragic was the main guy on that team. But Slovenia wins Eurobasket in 2017, which for a country of its size, probably to this day, the greatest sporting achievement that Slovenia has ever enjoyed.
I think that's fair.
And I, for a bunch of contractual, I just got scared, and I was like, I can't do this because it's going to mess with, like I said, it would take me an hour to explain the whole contractual part of it, but like, it was so dumb and just an absolute fumble. And to this day, it is the worst basketball regret of my life because what happens 9 months later? The Mavericks of Dallas make this incredible draft day trade with Atlanta, and Luka Doncic, who I could have spent the whole summer with the summer before, ends up coming to Dallas. So I always think about like, what would have happened had I gone on? I mean, I would have had a book, honestly, to go with Slovenia to be with them for a month as they go on this Cinderella ride. So at the Goran Dragic game, you would not go online and find the standing ovation that Igor Kokoshkov got from the Slovenian fans. It was as loud as anything that night. That's how, and he's Serbian, he's not Slovenian. That's how beloved he is just for being the coach of that team. So I guess that's my long-winded way of saying I was really high on Luka, but I think he's exceeded expectations amazingly in 6 seasons.
I remember Thomas Plessinger. Do you know Thomas, right? Yeah. So a guy that wrote, he's wrote a bunch of stuff, but he wrote The Great Nowitzki. He was talking to me. This was at the end of the season of the 2017-18 season, that exit interview day, and I was telling Thomas about Luka. I was telling everybody about Luka. I would not shut the heck up about Luka that whole season. I was like, this is the guy. The Mavs I know they're into him. I know they're going to get it. Like this, they just got to make it work. And Thomas is like, so what do you think Luka's going to be like? What kind of player? I said, well, I think high end, maybe like Manu, like peak Manu, Hall of Fame caliber player, but not,
right.
Now Manu might be putting up Luka numbers in this era, but that's for a different conversation. I was like, yeah, I think probably like 20 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, something like that. But I mean, he can do everything. He can run the pick and roll. He's big. He can post up, back to the basket, face up, step back three. And Thomas is like, well, the way you're talking about him, he could probably average 30 a game. And I was like, dude, no way. Don't be crazy, Thomas. And lo and behold, he just averaged like 30.
Were you as excited about drafting Luka as you were the only previous time you and I have ever sat next to each other with Mike Front?
Oh, man.
You guys should have seen this guy when the Mavs drafted Omax.
Oh, I was fired up.
Oh, wow. You have been on
fired up.
Max like from the very beginning.
And
Fired up.
I knew like nothing about him, and Bobby was beside
Had a whole scouting
himself.
report ready for you.
I like guys that bring the juice. Like Omax is my kind of player, right? But Luka is. I thought that Luka would be like a all-star almost immediately, and so whenever you broke the news that the Mavs are indeed getting that pick and they're going to draft Luka, that was. I remember what I was eating.
Hey,
I remember where I was.
Remembering that I did have that.
You did. That's the best tweet I've ever seen in my life. And,
Wow.
it was a lot of hugs backstage because I was just telling all my coworkers at the time. I was telling Dennis Smith Jr. at the time who was there. I was telling Harp. I was telling Sean Marion who were there backstage with us at the Mavs draft party. Like, you're not going to believe this guy. Like, this is the future of basketball, and I'm
the future of
very
basketball.
glad that I was right.
I don't have a long story about this, but I would also just like to say I was in on Luka. I mean, I don't.
Tim wants it on record. Damn
No
it,
proof,
he
but
was
just
in
trust me.
on
No,
Luka
there's plenty of
Doncic.
proof.
Okay,
You can go find receipts for this. I don't have
Tim
a.
said pull up the receipts he's got on.
I said
being a
you
Luka Doncic.
can find them if you don't believe me.
I'm just
because
saying.
It seems like you're a hater right now.
No, I'm saying go.
No,
pull
you're
up the
being a
receipt.
doubting Thomas.
I'm no, definitely not.
Yes,
a doubting.
you are.
I'm trying to
Yes,
put
you
on for
are.
you, Tim. Let me put on for you. Okay,
But
Say go
yeah,
pull
no,
up the
I
receipts.
I saw him as an all-star type player. I don't think that any of us saw him as a, 5 straight first-team All-NBA players, because you can't expect that or put that weight onto anybody. But yeah, I was very in on him.
I like Luka too.
I was just hey, shout out Tanner. I was just about to bring up. I wanted to make sure we got back to the thing you
because
ate.
I want to compare it to your Slovenia experience.
Okay.
So,
The question being, Stein, favorite thing you ate in Slovenia from Reader's Digest.
So, I mentioned this last week. The only flaw of my Slovenia trip, and this is really being selfish, I was fortunate enough to stay in the hotel that is housing everybody participating in the Dragic game. The first half hour I'm there, I see Chris Bosh, Andy Ellisberg from the Heat's front office, Power Agent Bill Duffy, Nowitzki and Nash ambling, and I'm like, I'm never leaving this hotel. Like this is a gold mine. But like, I wanted to see Slovenia. Like I have literally been writing about players for the Balkans. This summer was the 35-year anniversary of my first article in a real newspaper on the NBA, and it was on Vlade Divac. So it's like I've never been to the Balkans at all. And so like I really wanted to get out and explore between hotel stalking, the game, the gala, all the Dragic events. I really didn't see very much of Slovenia. But the two great culinary experiences I had, shout out to our friend Iztok Franco, who took,
Love you, Iztok.
Shout out Iztok.
who took me for cevapi at 1 a.m. after the Dragic game on Saturday night, because he knew that I would be devastated if I left Ljubljana without having at least one authentic serving of cevapi, which I think Mavs fans have to know what that is. It is wondrous, wondrous, wondrous sausages in bread. It's just tremendous. But I'm probably not saying it right, and I should have learned how to say this properly. Kranjska klobasa. And please, our friends from Slovenia who are listening, please teach a dumb American how to say this properly. On Friday or one of the days at the Dragic thing, they wheel into the lobby this cart. They're basically brats. It's like Polish sausage brats, but it's Slovenian style kielbasa on crusty roll, and I printed a picture of it in one of my recent Substacks, and they just rolled in a cart of these brats, and it was just like, and they were just giving them away. So obviously this was something organized by the Dragic organizers, but like,
I had this as well. I went with I didn't know Iztok then, which is very sad. I went in 2019, October, the first week of October 2019, or I guess it would have been September. The first week of September 2019 is when I was in Slovenia, in Ljubljana. I also had that. I'm forgetting the name, but I went with the podcast trio, the boys who do Dvorkovic. That might be wrong. I will double check that one. I know Ljubljana.
Our Slovenian pronunciations might be falling a tad short.
Yeah,
of
yeah. We're gonna
stay with the Slovenian. Please stay with us. Don't worry about it. Stay with us.
But it loosely. Oh man, I'm trying to go back and think. It loosely translates to like pick and roll or something to that effect. But yeah, it's just these 3 guys who do one of the most popular basketball podcast in Slovenia, and they took care of me. Basically, what was later described to me is I went to, the Slovenian version. It was a chain restaurant. It was a Slovenian chain restaurant to the extent that they have chain restaurants, but it was kind of like the Slovenians' version of Chili's, and it's just like. But I think that was said in a compliment, or I later heard that in a full compliment, because it's like, hey, if you just want like some really like comfort classic, maybe even a country barrel. What am I thinking of? County barrel.
Cracker Barrel.
Cracker Barrel.
Good.
That's
Lord.
a drop. That's a drop.
I was thinking of country fried chicken, and I
Put it all
mixed that
together,
up
did
with,
you?
First a Celtics jacket, now he can't even speak.
Get Cracker Barrel out. Good
Are you
gracious.
from here?
Do you need
What's
to
your
save this
deal,
story
man?
for tomorrow? Do you need to like get your facts together?
The other place that was incredible that I went. They have amazing Italian food. If you can't instantly like think of where Slovenia is on the map, let me just tell you, it abuts Italy. And so like all the Italian food that you're going to get in Italy that's going to be fantastic, it crosses the border pretty well. So they have amazing Italian out there. I definitely had traditional Slovenian food, and let's take a DLLS trip out there next summer.
That would be incredible.
Shout out to former Mavs intern Andrash, who he brought me, I believe it wasn't sausage, but it was salami, which I believe is pork anyway, right? But he brought me some from Slovenia, and it was unbelievable.
I'm starving now after all this
Me
talk.
too.
Well, guess what? We're done for the day, so Mark can go get something to eat. Make sure you come back with us tomorrow at 12 p.m. on DLLS Mavs here on DLLS Sports. Myself, Tim Cato, Bobby Corella, Marc Stein. I'm going to dial up the Stein line once again tomorrow. Again, 12 p.m. here on DLLS Sports for DLLS Mavs. For Mark, Bobby, Tim, man, Kevin. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Ostanite zdravi, Slovenia.
We all silly like the mayor.